Pause for a moment and give this your full attention, because what you're about to hear may completely change how you see a small act of kindness from your past, something you likely dismissed as insignificant. Years ago, you helped someone without expecting anything in return, believing it was just a normal moment in an ordinary day. But what if that moment carried far more weight than you ever imagined? Recently, information came to light that reframes that encounter entirely, suggesting it was not random, not accidental, and not meaningless. The truth is, that person was not just another stranger crossing your path. You were not in that place by chance, and she was not simply someone who needed help. That brief interaction carried a depth that reaches far beyond coincidence. There is a profound difference between helping someone out of simple kindness and unknowingly changing the course of the one person whose life was deeply connected to yours. And that difference is only now becoming clear. What makes this unsettling is the realization that she remembers you clearly. She didn't forget that day. In fact, she learned who you were, followed the threads left behind by that moment, and quietly observed your life from a distance. She didn't do this out of obsession or control, but out of certainty that what she experienced wasn't imagined. The impact of what she discovered has been unfolding slowly, and its influence may soon reach you in ways you don't yet expect. There are forces, call them timing, destiny, or something greater, that seem to resist keeping such connections hidden for long. Stay present with them, because understanding what truly happened that day requires looking beyond surface events and into the deeper meaning behind human connection. Now go back in time 3 years ago, maybe 4, maybe 5, the exact year isn't important. What matters is the moment itself. It was an unremarkable day by all visible measures. There were no signs telling you something important was about to happen. No sudden feelings, no intuition screaming for attention, no dramatic interruption to your routine. You were simply where you were, doing what you were doing. And so was she. What appeared to be a brief, forgettable interaction was actually the meeting point of 2 lives that had been moving toward each other without awareness. When you noticed her, it wasn't the way you normally notice people. Something subtle registered before thought could catch up. It wasn't attraction or curiosity. It was recognition on a level that doesn't rely on logic, like 2 signals locking into the same frequency after a long search. She needed help, not necessarily in a dramatic or dangerous way. Maybe she was lost in a place she didn't know. Maybe she was struggling to carry something heavy. Maybe she was emotionally overwhelmed and trying to hold herself together in public. Maybe she had lost her wallet and didn't know how she would get home. The details don't matter because the choice does. Many people would have walked past. On another day, you might have walked past too. But in that exact moment, you didn't. Something in you responded without calculation. You stepped forward. You helped. You expected nothing in return. You weren't trying to be impressive or memorable. You acted naturally from a place of decency and care. To you, it was just being human. To her, it was something else entirely. Ma'am Dahlia's, from her perspective, that moment stopped time. She didn't see a stranger being polite. She saw something she had been searching for without fully understanding it. A familiar energy, a pattern she recognized instantly. For years, she had carried images, feelings, and impressions that never quite made sense. She had dreamed of a presence that would appear during a moment of vulnerability. Not with grand gestures, but with quiet support. She had felt this long before she could explain it, long before she trusted it. When you stepped in to help, those fragments suddenly aligned. It felt real in a way nothing else ever had. What you didn't know is that this wasn't the first time she had seen you. Not exactly. As a child, she dreamed of someone who felt safe, steady, and familiar, even though she couldn't place a face to it. As a teenager, she found herself sketching the same features repeatedly, without knowing why. As she grew older, she sought answers wherever she could. and again she was told the same thing. That recognition would be immediate, that it would happen quietly, and that it would come disguised as something ordinary. When she finally stood in front of you that day, her body reacted before her mind could. It wasn't excitement or fear, it was certainty. Her heart didn't race, it synchronized. Her hands didn't shake from nerves, but from recognition. Everything in her said, "This is him," even though she knew she couldn't say it out loud. She stayed silent because she understood how it would sound. She knew that speaking the truth in that moment would only push you away or make you question her stability. So she thanked you, held your gaze just a moment longer than normal, and let you walk away. But letting you go didn't mean forgetting you. In the days that followed, she barely slept. She replayed every detail she could remember, not obsessively, but carefully. Your voice, your expression, the calm she felt near you. She returned to the place where you met, walked the same paths, and wondered if fate might allow another chance encounter. If you mentioned anything about your life, she followed those details gently, piecing together clues not to interfere, but to reassure herself that what she felt was real. And eventually, she found you online. Seeing your face again confirmed what she already knew deep down. She didn't reach out, she didn't intrude. So she watched quietly, reading your words, noticing your character, paying attention to how you move through the world. And then she began to notice something that unsettled her in a different way. During moments when she was struggling emotionally, you would post something that spoke directly to what she was experiencing without knowing her at all. On the day she lost her job, you wrote about resilience. When she ended a painful relationship, you shared thoughts about release and growth. The timing was too precise to ignore. What once seemed like a brief, forgettable act of kindness was anything but that. Some moments don't reveal their meaning right away. Some connections don't announce themselves loudly. And some people enter our lives so quietly that we don't realize their importance until much later, when the pattern finally becomes impossible to deny. Dahlia's, on the very same day she uncovered betrayal from someone she trusted deeply, you shared a message about the importance of surrounding yourself with people who are genuine and real. You didn't do this because you knew anything about her situation. You couldn't have, and yet the timing aligned perfectly. It wasn't coincidence. It was synchronicity. You were moving through parallel emotional lessons, experiencing similar challenges at the same moments, as if your lives were running on invisible tracks that mirrored each other. Your words reached her without knowing her name, and her experiences echoed in your reflections without you knowing her pain. That was the pattern she began to notice again and again. Two separate lives, responding to the same emotional currents at the same time. What began as curiosity slowly turned into certainty. Her search was no longer about confirming that the encounter happened. She already knew that. What she needed now was to understand who you truly were. She approached this quietly and patiently, studying your life the way a researcher studies something rare and meaningful. Every word you shared revealed your values. Every story showed what mattered to you. Every decision you spoke about reflected your inner compass. She paid attention to how you treated people when there was nothing to gain, how you spoke to service workers, how you acknowledged people others ignored, how you extended respect without expecting gratitude. Over time, a clear picture formed. Your kindness wasn't a single moment. It was consistent. It was character. It was who you were, even when no one was watching. As she continued observing, something deeper emerged. She recognized her own fears reflected in yours. The quiet fear of not being enough, despite giving so much. The fear of never being truly seen beneath roles, expectations, and social masks. The fear of emotional isolation, even when surrounded by people. These shared vulnerabilities didn't weaken the connection. They strengthened it. They showed balance. Where she carried strength, you carried softness. Where you stood steady, she carried sensitivity. Not identical, but complementary. Like two pieces shaped differently yet designed to fit together with precision, as if intention, not chance, had shaped them. Then she found something she wasn't looking for. While scrolling through your older content, she came across a post you had written years before you ever met her. It wasn't polished, it wasn't performative, it was raw. In it, you described the kind of connection you longed for, not in terms of appearance, status, or circumstance, but in terms of depth. You wrote about wanting someone who could see you clearly, without illusion, someone who understood you beyond words, someone whose presence felt like resonance rather than effort. Every quality you described matched her exactly. It felt as though you had written a quiet message into the world, asking for a soul you hadn't yet met, and the world had been preparing the answer ever since. Reading that post broke something open in her, she cried, not out of sadness but relief. For the first time, the recognition went both ways. It wasn't only that she had been searching for you. You had been searching for her too, in your own way, through your thoughts, your words, your intentions. Your lives hadn't crossed randomly. They had been circling each other, slowly narrowing the distance. Two frequencies calling out through time, waiting for alignment. This is where her choice became extraordinary. Despite finally finding the person she had felt connected to for so long, she chose not to approach you. Not yet. That decision required restraint, patience, and a level of emotional maturity few people ever reach. She understood something important, that timing matters as much as connection. She knew that meeting too early, before you were ready to recognize what stood in front of you, could damage something meant to last. Real connection doesn't rush. It waits for the right moment, not the convenient one. She could see that you were still closing old chapters, that parts of your energy were still tied to past experiences that needed to be fully released. She sensed that you were in the middle of discovering who you were becoming, and that this process needed to complete before you could fully open to someone new. Most of all, she recognized a belief you were still shedding, the idea that love must be difficult, earned through struggle, proven through pain. She knew that if she appeared too easily, too smoothly, you might question it instead of trusting it. So she chose patience, she chose growth. While you worked through your own healing, she began working through hers. She faced old wounds she knew could interfere with a future connection. Fears of abandonment, patterns of insecurity, hesitations around intimacy. Not because she was waiting passively, but because she was preparing consciously. She decided that when the moment finally arrived, she wouldn't meet you as someone unfinished, but as someone whole. She approached everything with awareness and intention, because she understood that whatever would eventually grow between you could not be built on unresolved pain or unexamined patterns. She didn't want to arrive carrying emotional weight that could weaken something meant to last a lifetime. So she faced herself honestly. She worked through fears, habits, and old reactions, not to become someone impressive, but to become someone stable, present, and capable of standing beside you fully. She began developing qualities she sensed you would need in a partner, not because she wanted to mold herself to your expectations, but because she understood that what you would build together required strength, clarity, and emotional intelligence from both sides. In her heart, she knew this connection was not meant only for comfort or romance. It was meant for shared purpose, for contribution, for work that could only be done when two aligned people moved as one. Blamed as part of that preparation, she became deliberate about her inner state. She practiced stillness daily. She cultivated discipline in her thoughts and emotions. She learned to clear internal noise so her energy would remain steady and clean. Not out of obsession, but out of respect for what she believed was coming. She wanted the moment of conscious meeting to feel unmistakable, calm, grounded, and undeniable. And while she did all this, she continued to observe you quietly, never crossing boundaries, never interfering directly, but remaining attentive, like someone safeguarding something precious from afar. Her presence in your life, however, wasn't limited to observation alone. In ways you couldn't consciously see, she was supporting you. Think back to moments when you felt an unexplained push to keep going, when you were exhausted or discouraged. Times when quitting seemed logical, yet something inside urged you forward anyway. Those moments may not have come from logic at all. They may have come from intention sent quietly, deliberately, without expectation. When she sensed you were struggling, she focused on you during meditation, not to influence your choices, but to reinforce your strength. You received that support without knowing its source, only feeling steadier than you should have felt given the circumstances. Band, consider the times when what you needed appeared with perfect timing. A book, a conversation, an unexpected opening, a helpful stranger. It didn't feel forced. It felt natural, yet the timing was precise. She wasn't trying to control your path, only to soften it where she could. She believed that real love doesn't need acknowledgement. It works quietly. It supports without demanding gratitude. It shows up even when unseen. That same quiet support extended into your dreams. Those moments where you sensed a gentle, comforting presence while sleeping. Feminine, calm, familiar, weren't random. In sleep, the mind loosens its grip and deeper awareness becomes accessible. In those states, she reached you not to disturb, but to reassure, to remind you that you weren't alone, that something meaningful was unfolding, even if you couldn't yet remember it. Upon waking, the memory faded, but the feeling remained. Hope without explanation, peace without reason. About 6 months ago, something shifted. Not dramatically, not with signs or voices, but with a deep inner knowing that surfaced during quiet reflection. She sensed that the timing was changing, that both of you had reached a point where growth had matured enough for movement to begin. That alignment was forming. From that moment, she began preparing in tangible ways that would eventually become visible to you. She started positioning herself closer to your world, not directly, not obviously, but through people, places, and subtle intersections. If new individuals entered your life recently and felt unusually aligned or familiar, there's a strong chance she's connected to them in some way. Genuine connections formed quietly, creating unseen bridges between your lives. Tori, if new places suddenly began calling to you, spaces that felt right without you, knowing why, it may be because those places were gently placed in your awareness. Conversations, recommendations, chance discoveries, all nudging you toward environments where paths could naturally cross. And if your life began shifting direction unexpectedly, doors closing without explanation, others opening effortlessly, it may not have been random. Some paths were being softened, others quietly discouraged, not to control you, but to keep you aligned with what mattered most. Tulaminder. At the same time, she focused on clearing remnants of your past. This is the part that challenges logic but resonates deeply on an intuitive level. She worked on releasing emotional ties that no longer served you, not from jealousy, not from fear, but from care. She focused on forgiveness where there had been hurt, closure where there had been confusion, and release where there had been attachment. The intention was simple. When the moment finally came, you would be free to meet her without carrying old weight into something new. Then she also began leaving quiet signals, nothing obvious, nothing dramatic. Subtle patterns, repeated themes, moments that only you would notice if you were paying attention. Which leads to the question, how do you know this is real? How do you tell the difference between imagination and an authentic connection unfolding beyond conscious awareness? The signs are subtle, but you may have noticed an increase in messages around meaningful connection. Stories, films, songs, conversations, all pointing toward patience, depth, and alignment in relationships, not because you searched for them, but because they found you. You may have experienced recurring dreams featuring a presence you can't fully see, yet somehow recognize. The details repeat. The feeling remains. And when you wake, something lingers. You may also feel drawn to improve yourself, not from pressure, but from an internal sense that preparation matters. Health, clarity, emotional balance suddenly feel important for reasons you can't fully explain. bleeds. You may also notice strange conversations where people casually mention someone who sounds like a perfect match, yet nothing comes of it. Those moments aren't accidents. They are part of a wider pattern forming quietly around you. And perhaps the most telling sign of all is a gentle awareness. That you're not moving through life alone. That something kind, patient, and attentive is watching over your progress without interfering. When the moment of meeting finally arrives, that feeling will make sense instantly, and finally memories begin resurfacing of that original encounter you once dismissed. Details you hadn't thought about in years suddenly return, clearer than before, asking to be understood at last. Your mind is only now beginning to catch up with what your deeper awareness recognized instantly on that day. What felt ordinary at the surface carried far more weight beneath it. That brief encounter stayed dormant in your memory because your conscious mind didn't yet have the framework to understand it. But now, something inside you is connecting the pieces. And this brings us to the question that matters most to you right now. What happens next? How does this story continue in the physical world? Over the coming months, you may notice a shift in the way life places people in your path. Social situations you would normally avoid will start presenting themselves without effort. Invitations will come from unexpected directions. You may feel sudden urges to go somewhere, to attend something, or to be present in a specific place at a specific time without being able to explain why. Those impulses are not random. They are subtle nudges, guiding movement rather than forcing it, aligning paths that have been moving toward each other for a long time. Trust them. They are part of a larger synchronization unfolding naturally. As time passes, you may also notice something curious in your conversations. Different people, completely unrelated to each other, may begin mentioning the same kind of person, sometimes even the same individual, describing her in ways that stir something deep inside you. It won't feel logical, but it will feel familiar. That repetition serves a purpose. It prepares your awareness gently, so recognition doesn't overwhelm you when the moment finally arrives. The mind adapts before the experience so the heart can remain open instead of shocked, and then one day you will find yourself in the right place at the right time. Nothing dramatic will announce it beforehand, but when you see her, everything inside you will respond at once. This won't feel like ordinary attraction. It will feel like sudden clarity, like something locking into place. Your body will react before thought can intervene. Your heart will shift rhythm. Your hands may tremble slightly. The world around you may blur, not because it disappears, but because your focus narrows completely. And when she looks at you, you'll see something in her eyes that words can't easily explain. Relief, recognition, emotion held back for a very long time. She won't greet you in a conventional way. What she says won't sound like small talk or polite introduction. It will sound like something said by someone who has been waiting patiently, consciously, for years. And in that instant, memory will rush back. You'll remember the first encounter clearly. You'll recognize the subtle ways she's been present without being seen. You'll understand that moments you once dismissed as coincidence were part of a longer thread guiding both of you forward. It will become clear that your life wasn't drifting aimlessly. It was converging, but this moment doesn't arrive automatically. If through alignment, it requires that you continue the work you've already begun, growing, healing, remaining open even when life tests your resolve. It asks that you stay receptive to the idea that something larger than immediate logic may be shaping your path. She has already done her part with patience and consistency. Now the responsibility rests with you to meet that same level of readiness. What you need to understand clearly is this: that moment years ago was never insignificant. It wasn't a random act of kindness that faded into the background of your life. It mattered deeply. You stepped in at the right moment for the one person whose life was connected to yours in ways neither of you could consciously grasp at the time. While you continued living, assuming it was simply a good deed, she was quietly growing, healing, and preparing, ensuring that when the time was right, the meeting would happen without distortion or confusion. The end. That moment is closer than you think. Close enough that if you slow down and listen, you may already feel a subtle anticipation beneath the surface of your daily life. And if something in this story stirred emotion you couldn't fully explain, if you felt a quiet recognition rather than excitement, it's because part of you already understands. It knows that you are not meant to walk through life feeling unseen or disconnected. It knows that meaningful connection is not only possible, but approaching. If this message resonated deeply, take it as an invitation to remain aware. Continue becoming the version of yourself that recognizes truth when it stands in front of you. Some connections do not rush. They arrive exactly when both people are ready to meet them fully. And when that moment comes, you won't need proof. You'll know.